Okay, let's get right into it. Let's select this object. We already have an unwrap modifier on here. We're going to select this piece. Invert the selection. We're going to scale the rest of this down really small and just put it in a corner. So now I have this piece here. I'm going to relax it. Okay, there we are. Place it in the center. Now at this point, I'm going to use stretch. Okay. Maybe it's best that I open up the editor so you get a better view here. Now, if I skew this like so, I'd like for you just to see this as an example. A left click will stretch it vertically until it is maximized in the space, and a right click will do it horizontally until it is maximized in the space. Okay, so you see here that there's a vertices on the line for 0. There's one on the line for 1 of U. There's one on the line for V. And there's one on the line for V0. I kind of muddied through that, but I'm pretty sure you get the point here. This is V1 and V0. This is U0 and U1. Okay, so the maximum amount has been met by the first vertices that have actually touched those locations, the texture verts that have met those minimums and maximums. Okay, so let's get into the next one. We have space. Let's actually open the editor back up. It's nice to use for some of these videos. So I'm going to select these vertices, scale them down. I'll drag this one back over. That way they're kind of like wonky. Now I'm going to click space. Now it spaces them out on the U, on the lateral, okay? And you can see that by the button. The dots go side to side. It is top to bottom in the viewport, so make sure you're paying attention to which way your UV coordinates work here. And that's basically that. It spaces out the vertices. It's the standard max spacing, okay? So we can do the same thing with, I should do this side because the other side's kind of blocked off. Now I can do spacing for vertical, and there you go. It spaces out. Now notice they're not aligned. They're just spaced vertically. All right. Next, we have something where we should pack, and we'll turn on scale and pack. Okay, that's good. I'm actually going to solve those and pack them. There we go. Okay. Sliding. Nope, we're not sliding. We're doing the vertical stacking and alignment. So what we're going to do here is take this one element and scale it up. And we're going to take another one and scale it down. We're going to take all of the elements with a Control A and left click the left alignment on the vertical. You can see in the icon that the line is vertical. Okay, so this stacks these elements aligned on the left. Now you can't see them all because they go out of the UV space. So you can either open up the UV editor to look at this, or you can click Fit Fill to normalize to what you have selected. And there we go. So now I can select it in the center and to the right. Now when you run this function, it's always going to place your selection in the center of the UV map, and then you can align it how you like, then place it how you like, okay? And you'll see now that it's on the left, if I was to align it again, it would place it in the center and then align it. The reason for that is because if you're working with large objects or objects of scale, they could go off of the texture map space. You might not be able to see what you want to see. So this is an easy way to make everybody happy, but it does add in an extra set of steps because you will now need to click to place it where you'd like to place it, okay? Of course, you can open up the editor and then move it around manually and do things how you prefer, okay? So the same thing with the horizontal, and there you go. It's the same thing. Next is Fit Fill. I'm going to select this one here in the middle. And when I left click, it's going to fit the largest dimension to the minimum maximum of the shape, okay? Maybe this is a better example here. Okay, so I'm going to scale this at skew. Now this is taller than it is wider. So it's going to scale it uniformly until it meets a maximum on the U or the V. Or I should say meets the minimum and maximum on the U or the V. Okay, so that's scaled, and it met V1 and V0 first, so it stopped scaling. Okay, and there's your selection. If we wanted to have the other dimension, the lesser dimension, scaled until it met its minimum and maximum, we would right click. Now that's going to take it and make the wider dimension fall outside of the UV normalized space. You see that here. So that scaled it uniformly until it met its coordinates on the sides, right? Okay, so this can be useful in certain circumstances. So it's fit, fill, and this might even be called flood. I've seen people use different terms for these things, so I'm not sure which terms you would specifically use, but if we left click, I say it's fit it, we just put it in. We right click, we kind of flood it or we fill it, but I think that this should be called flood. I'm going to right click with a shift, and you see that it takes the scale, it gets rid of the scale, and it automatically just fills it to the entire UV space. So it kind of floods it. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm completely wrong on the terms. Let's move on anyways. Next, we have flip and mirror. So when you flip something, it breaks it out. Okay, so when we left click, we're mirroring because it's not being broken out. And I'll right click now so you see that that is flipped. It actually created a UV element. So what I'm going to do here is take that, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to flip that back and then right click to, or I should say I mirrored that back. Now I right click to flip it. So you can see it's broken and flipped. Okay. Now let's do the same thing for the vertical. Left click will mirror. You see there's no broke, there's distortion. Then we can left click to put that back and right click to flip, which did break it. Now there's no distortion. Okay. And we can do a stitch. And there we go. We get it stitched back in, but it broke the layout. So, you know, there's ways that you'll have to figure out how you want things to resolve. And if you want smaller sections to conform to larger sections or the opposite, there's various ways to handle that and various functions. So let's get back on track here. Next, we have a line. So this is quite easy. This is if we have an element that is at an angle here and we'd like to straighten it. Well, we're going to choose the edge that we want to have perfectly vertical or perfectly lateral. So we're going to go to edge mode. I'm going to select this edge, turn that on. I'm now going to click align. Okay. Now that edge is this edge here and it's perfectly lateral. Okay. Now I'm going to choose one that's at an angle like this edge here. I'm not going to choose that one specifically, but you get my point. I'm choosing something that is going to resolve in the element being askew, or I'm sorry, rotated at an angle from this origin. Okay. So we'll click align. Now you see that is perfectly vertically straight and the element has been changed to it. So that is basically align the element, and there you are. Going to select this, and then we align that like that. I think there's align to selected elements, like if you wanted to align this edge to another edge and then have the unit or the element aligned with that. I think I started building that, but then I put it off on a side burner. So I have a lot of functions that are not included in this UI. There's hundreds of functions that are not in this UI. Some of them are good. Some of them are not good. Okay, let's continue in with align. Now this one is a little different because we're just going to align by position. So if I actually take this edge, I'm going to control and left click each of these, and it's going to inform me in a tooltip now where my UV coordinate is, right? So those seem to be at the same place there. Well, they're both at the same place because we're using the center of the selection. So this center point of the UV space is where we will align, but it's based upon which button we used, which means the direction of how the next element is going to be moved. Okay, so we're going to take this. We'll use this edge, okay? And now I'll left click, and you see that we've been moved to that position on the lateral, but we're not at that position on the vertical. So now we can do that position on the vertical. Okay, so now we've moved that edge to this edge perfectly, but you notice that we're not aligning that shell unit to that specifically. So if we wanted to do something like that, we can click align. That will align the shell, and that will make that line vertical. So these two lines can now be perfectly set up. And just to make sure, we can click these two buttons again to make sure it is on the perfect center of that spot. Okay, so once again, that's select an edge, control click to define that position, and then select an edge on another piece and left click either to get them to go there. Okay. All right, so this next one that we have is align. And from what I remember when I was making this, I wanted it to work with faces, edges, and vertices. So this is a multi-purpose button. As far as I know, I'm going to pause and come back in a moment. I might be wrong. All right, great. So I wasn't wrong this time anyhow, right? So what we're going to do is take these elements and I'll actually align them like so. Okay. Now what we're going to do is grab some edges and we can align them like so. Okay. And you can see that aligned for us. Okay. And we can take some vertices and we can align them like so. Now, okay, so what's so great about that? Well, that's left click. It will align the elements, faces. Let's see if the faces do that too. I can't remember if I do it without the element or not. Okay, let's line that. Okay, so that was a little different. I'm not sure what I was doing there. Let's just try it again. It's selecting the elements so I can do an alignment of the elements. Okay. So it's just doing that. We do not handle faces. We handle elements, edges, and vertices. Now, the nice thing about this is, let's get this handled. Go into polygon mode. We'll select this set. I want to rotate that. Rotate that. And I'm going to take this, this, and this, and I'll take that and I'll spread that. I'm going to actually scale that down. So imagine that we want to have all of these top vertices aligned, right? And I'm going to do this on purpose. So a lot of the times you align something, I'll do it separately. So we'll do this. A lot of times when you align something, they'll align to their own elements, right? So if we left click align, you see this one aligned and this one aligned. It didn't align with one another. So if you right click, it will align with one another, okay? So once again, we're going to select the vertices. We're going to left click align to get it to align with its own accompanying element vertices. And if we right click, it's going to force a full alignment between the selection, no matter what the selection is. All right. All right, we're almost done, at least with this section. And then what do we have here? We have UV, we have XYZ and AV. So this is all planar mapping. We can do a quick XYZ planar map, and we can also do a normal, average normal, and a view map. All right, good. So let's go right into this. I'm glad I have these things to remind me what I put in here. Now, this is kind of like a feature that I just added. I can see it's useful for people, but it's basically like a filler button. Now, you notice I don't have a row with 4 buttons or 2 buttons. I only made it so that all the features are there. No, that's a weird way to say it. I've only made it so that all the rows of buttons are filled with buttons. So we don't have an incomplete row of buttons. That's basically it. All right, so let's see. We can shift, left click is X. Control left click is Y. Alt left click is Z. Then we have shift And right click is align by average normal, which that doesn't give us a very good thing here. So let's actually box map. We'll take these. Okay, so now we're going to average normal that. We can actually get an idea of what the average normal is for our selection, because you see this yellow plane here. That normal is basically shooting off in the direction of the faces. That's going to be the average normal. So we're going to shift and right click, and you see we have a projection on the average normal. Okay, and then what do we have last? It's control and right click for the view mapping. So we can map based upon how our camera is looking at the object. So let's go back to this, select all. We can make a blob, but if we want to make a blob that's specifically looking this way, or we wanted to make a blob specifically looking this way, right? There you go. I wanted to show you a couple options. All right, so there's that. Now let's get into these selections down here. These will work in the unwrap modifier as well as in the editable poly and edit poly modifier. Okay, and that's because my intention here is to create tools where they just work. So if you're in a mode and it's a type of thing, it should just do its thing. So there should be an edge button, a vertex button, and a face button, and it should just work on edge vertices and faces wherever the heck they are, however they are. Now I know knots are different and other things have different methods, and we have all sorts of different things. But for the most part, components are components. We don't need to convolute things, right? And that's where I'm focusing on in tools and other tools I have coming beyond SSUV. We're going to simplify, or I'm going to simplify work paths to a greater extent for what I prefer, and I think a lot of people are going to like that. So anyways, let's go with, we're going to grow the ring selection. So I'm in the editable poly. I'm just going to select a bunch of edges here, okay? I'm going to left click, and you see we grew rings all the way around for what we had selected. I'm now going to right click. We have nothing happening for the right click. So the right click is reserved for the unwrap modifier type. And we'll go to, let's see here. We can go left click. We can subtract. No, we're not subtracting for some reason, but we were able to add rings. There's adding loops. We're not able to subtract loops. Okay, so maybe I didn't fully fill this out. Maybe it's just an idea I had in my head. Let's go into the unwrap phase or the unwrap modifier, because that's what this tool is about. We don't need to dilly-dally with the editable poly stuff. All right, so we'll go into edge mode. We'll turn on the edges. I'll select an edge, and I will now left-click ring, so we're growing the ring. I'll now left-click shrink the ring. There you go. So we can grow and shrink. And if I right-click grow, it will grow the ring selection until it reaches the maximum of the element. So we need to make a couple elements here so that we have a limit for this to find so that you can experience this properly. So let's select that. I'm going to now turn this off. Ooh. I'm going to right click ring, and you see it stops once it hits the edge of the element. Now I'm going to show you the loop. We left click the loop. We left click the shrink loop. We can right click the grow loop. We have the grow until we hit the edges or the seams of the element. And right clicking the negative sign doesn't do anything. I hope I explained that correctly. I know I kind of half mushed that language there, but I think the visual should be good enough for you. At this point, let's go into face mode. We have grow the selection. We can plus, minus, and if I right click plus, we're selecting the entire object. Okay. Now if I go into edge mode and I left click plus, we grow. If I right click plus, we grow to the entire object. If I left click again to get some, and then I left click to shrink, we can shrink and grow. And there you go. That's basically that. So that's the entire tool set covered in, yeah, it took some time. I think that's an hour worth of videos there. So thank you for sitting through that. And I hope you're going to be enjoying the use of SSUV. And, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to have the support email set up so we can talk that way. But I'd like to have the bug form directly sent to a Trello board for ideas, suggestions, and other things. And maybe we can turn this into something better. I mean, I think it's nice, but polishing this up, I'd really like to see it polished up. Okay.